All right, welcome once again to the Pieces of Systematic Review with Margaret Foster special Q&A webinar. Thank you everyone for joining us. We went ahead and decided to have this session because we received so many excellent questions, both on our social media and in the chat during our first two sessions of the series. So we wanted to have this opportunity to give Margaret some extra time and answer some of those questions. We have collected the previous questions from the first two sessions, but if anyone has a new question, please share it with us in the chat box. Margaret will be happy to take new questions as well as answer some of the old questions. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Margaret, who of course needs no introduction, but she is the Associate Professor at Texas A&M University and serves as the Systematic Reviews Coordinator at the Medical Sciences Library with a joint position at the School of Public Health and the College of Medicine. So good morning, Margaret.
Good morning. So thank you all for your excellent questions, and I have put some of the answers on some slides, and then we'll talk through some more. There were a few questions that didn't make it on the slides, so I have those kind of on the side, and then I'll be getting to your questions as you post them as well. Systematics. I guess I don't see where that's at. Okay. These are the questions that we have been covered so far, and we'll be covering soon. So some of your questions, especially matched in with the session that's going to be on software, some matched well with the other types of review session that we will do. So I will cover some of those questions kind of briefly, and then hopefully more in depth when we get to those sessions. So far we've talked about determining if a research question is right for the systematic review, and then looked at what searches to do beyond the typical databases. And then in April, we're going to look at what happens after the search. So what's the researchers expected to do? Then we'll take a session and cover lots of different software and other types of reviews. And then finally, some of the new and upcoming review methods. Better, more efficient ways of doing things, and some exciting things like living systematic reviews. Here's some of the themes of the questions that I saw. It was looking at types of reviews, more about the different frameworks. One was modifying the search. Hopefully I can do that. I don't know that I have a slide that will explain it well, but I'll try and talk you through it. Locating systematic reviews, a lot of questions about working with clients and teams, and then searching. So I have started building a Google site that's going to have lots of the resources that I've mentioned. I posted some of the videos that we have here on it, and hopefully it'll be a way for us to continue the conversation that we've started as well. So please visit there, and right now it's very kind of basic skeleton of a site, and I'll be adding more. I tried to put in a lot of the resources that I've already mentioned here. Okay, so getting into some of the questions. One question that I get a lot is, what about those things that call themselves systematic reviews, but they aren't really? And I get this comment a lot when I show the trending kind of graph showing anything that called itself a systematic review in Scopus, and showing how there's been a big increase in systematic reviews. So one thing is for that graph, I'm just trying to have a trend, and so the only way I can do that is by those things that call themselves systematic reviews. So there's two issues. There are articles or studies out there that are systematic reviews but don't call themselves that. And then there's systematic reviews that aren't really systematic reviews. And so it comes down to a matter of, just like all other research methods, even randomized control trials, we've got to read them, see what they did, and figure out what are they really. And so one thing that I do with the medical students is I will pick one topic, such as diabetes management, and then find a narrative review, a systematic review that's not really a systematic review. So I'll find multiple reviews on that same topic, and then we just focus on the methods themselves so that they can see the differences. And we don't necessarily read the whole article. We just focus on the method, and that has seemed to help a great deal. So we're going to talk more about rapid reviews in one of the later sessions. But basically, rapid reviews, they tend to not do as thorough of a search, maybe not do any of the other searches that we talked about last time. Sometimes they skip risk of bias appraisal, and so they have to be, they still have to be appraised in the same way as we do any other systematic review, and depending on what shortcuts they take, you have to take their results with the with consideration of those shortcuts that they did. I had some questions about scoping reviews, and they're not necessarily limited to current studies, but a lot of the scoping reviews that I've seen will say something like, we just wanted to look at the current literature. So it's just a trend, but it's not necessarily part of the method itself. There are lots of other types of review types out there right now, and integrative is one that comes up as well. I would say that an integrative review, they tend to fall into this scoping review type, in that they have a broader question. They want to look at lots of different types of studies and articles, but they still want to tell you what they did. So the hard part about reviews overall is that it's a spectrum. It's not really this nice box that you can put everything into. And so no matter what the review is, you have to look at it for what it is and then decide, was that appropriate, that kind of a thing. Another question that I did around, I got around review types was about the validity of narrative reviews. So one thing with the term validity, validity is applying to a research method. So it's saying, was it designed well, and are the methods sound? And as narrative reviews are basically opinions, it's hard to apply that term validity to it. Some narrative reviews are bordering on that spectrum with scoping reviews and systematic reviews, in that they may tell you what they did. They may tell you how they selected things. So I think they just need to be appraised in the same way. Can you tell what they did? Did they do a risk of bias appraisal? Can you decide for yourself if it's what they did and if it makes sense? So hopefully that helps with that. There were some questions about the frameworks, especially and applying them into certain disciplines. And definitely you could take any of the frameworks and take the P from being really specific population and opening that up wider. So there's lots of examples out there, and what I did for the frameworks on this next slide is take the 4 major ones that I see in medicine and kind of showed them here. And I got this list from ROBIS, which is a risk of bias tool for systematic reviews, and they have this nice set of frameworks they have at the beginning. And so they look at basically 4 different frameworks. So intervention questions, questions about exposure, which you could think about as etiology or epidemiology or basically a factor, a testing question, and then predictor question. And of course, we still have lots of other questions, but lots of reviews can fall into these. So I tried to give a variety of kind of topics in here. Do you have any other questions about frameworks that I can answer? I wasn't sure how much more to go into frameworks. We had talked a lot about them already. So maybe that's okay. Okay. There were a lot of questions about finding systematic reviews. Oh, I meant to have this, the animals one on a different slide. Oh well. I had some questions. Would I use clinical queries to find systematic reviews? I personally don't use that. I don't think it's a terrible way to get reviews out of PubMed. I just don't personally do that. I tend to go to either PubMed Health or use one of the filters that was designed for Ovid Medline, because that's my preferred way of searching Medline. And then PubMed Health is pulling from lots of different places. And PubMed Health also has a nice page on finding systematic reviews as well. And I can post that link into the chat box. And if you ever lose this link, you can basically just Google PubMed Health and finding systematic reviews, and it comes up. And so it really describes how they are collecting systematic reviews for PubMed Health, and then some other information as well about narrowing down and different filters you could use for PubMed. So that's a really useful page. Okay. There are lots of other places to get search filters, and one of those is the ISSG search filter page, where they've been collecting articles and search filters, and those articles are those that are reporting on the validity testing that was done on different search filters. And so this page is showing some of the different categories of search filters, and then on the right side I put in a copy. I know it's a little bit fuzzy. These are different filters that were designed for qualitative studies, and so you can see that some of them designed for CINAHL, Embase, Medline. There's also PsycInfo is listed here as well. There are other filter pages out there. I've included several on the page that I started for this webinar. And you can also get to, they have other filters as well, so some geography tags and others. So it's a nice way to keep up with what's coming out. Okay. I had a lot of questions about working with clients, and several questions were around, do I require a complete protocol, or what do I require before someone comes to meet with me? Every systematic review service that I've heard about is run a little bit differently, and it depends on how you choose to set up your policies. I personally don't require that a student or a researcher has already completed their protocol, and I tend to work with them to develop it. I am in a position where I'm educating them at the same time as we are conducting them, because there aren't really opportunities on campus to learn how to do a protocol from other courses. I sometimes get questions about those things that I say, oh, I asked the researcher to do this, such as create the table or to sort something, and people always ask, do faculty not want to do those things? I tend to gauge how open the faculty are to doing certain things, and depends on my relationship with them, depends on how we've said that we're going to work on a review. So I always have that conversation in the beginning. And here's a big one: how do I prepare the faculty for the volume they're getting back? So in that first meeting, when we're starting to talk about the feasibility of their search, I always try and mitigate what they're thinking, how many numbers we're going to get back. So I'm able to do kind of a quick search and say, oh, I expect about this many, but it could be many more once we add in all the synonyms and all the tags. And so I think it's just having that conversation, and also having tools ready for them to help with those, like Rayon and or however you're deciding to sort. Lots of things came back about how long does the average review take, what should they be expecting. I try to tell them in the beginning that from what I've seen, the average is about a year to a year and a half. I have had a few where we were able to scope it down so narrowly that they were able to do it in 6 months, but that is very rare. And I have worked on several that have taken more than 4 years. So I just try and just be open with them and just talk through that. In the last several years, I've started working with groups that were very interested in registering the reviews, and I got some questions about that. The 2 that I've done most recently have been in Prospero. Campbell and JBI do have, and JBI stands for Joanna Briggs Institute. They both have some title registers. I know with JBI you can register even more of your protocol. I'm not sure if Campbell has gotten into exactly protocol registries, but they have and they're about to. They're leaning that way. And it's really nice to get involved with the researchers before they're getting to that point of putting their protocol in. But just because they put up a search that you might not think was the best, that doesn't mean they can't go in and change it. And so I've worked with a few groups where they put up a search that didn't follow the standards, and then we negotiated to take that search down and put up the new one that we worked on. It is nice when they do that work beforehand, but the main thing that I ask for them to come when they come to see me is to bring any article they've already found relevant, and that always helps in building the search. And then if not, then we'll find some relevant things as we're talking. Let's see, looking at my other list over here. Okay. Oh, this is a screenshot from Campbell, and so I forgot this one was here. They do have their template for what they're expecting you to do for title registration, and then developing the protocol, and they do have what they expect that. Do you set up alerts for current articles? I do that with several clients. Just depends on how comfortable they are getting those alerts and then actually managing those alerts. Where are they going to put the articles? Sometimes I found they get those alerts and they go through them, but they didn't then take those articles and put them into whatever tool we're using for sorting. And so it was becoming a problem because they've done the work, they've actually decided which ones they wanted, but now I've got to go back and add them back into what we're using for sorting so that everything adds up in the end. So there was a while there where I was doing that with almost all my groups, and then now I've gotten it down to those that are actually feel comfortable with adding it to whatever tool we're sorting. So, and it would also, I think, depend on how many articles you're getting back as well. Okay. Lots of questions about the team. So one of the myths that we were getting was that they're suitable projects for a team of one. And I would say overall, if you look at all the checklists, that almost all the checklists on quality are looking at did at least 2 independent authors do the screening and evaluation and coding. So definitely you would need at least 2. And there have been some recent articles showing that having more than 5, though, can really slow down the process. So I would say some of the best groups, teams that I've seen at least at being efficient and getting it done well, is 3 to 5 at the most. I got this other one. Students can conduct a systematic review without much help from their PI. And so in this case, the PI is basically a stakeholder, and it's one of those stakeholders that the student is going to need some input from. And you may have other teams where they have other stakeholders they need to check in with. So there's different stages at which you may need different stakeholders to weigh in. I learned this especially when I was working on my own thesis and I had to answer to a thesis committee. I did some steps that then I had to go back and almost redo because they said, oh, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? And so I learned from that before they complete certain steps when we're just in that protocol stage. Oh, it's really important to go back and talk to your dissertation committee or whatever stakeholders they are, because in some cases with researchers, they have an expert clinician that they're going to consult. I would say go and talk with that stakeholder and make sure that this part makes sense before you go through everything with the search or whatever stages you decide you should talk with those stakeholders. There was a question about, do teams look different in public health or policy systematic reviews? And I wasn't sure in which factor we're looking at how the team is composed. I would say overall the strongest systematic reviews are going to be done when you have an interdisciplinary team that can help to provide the context, the different perspectives on that topic, as well as team members with different strengths as far as the different processes and the systematic review process. So you may have those that feel really comfortable with the statistics. Of course, as a librarian, I'm coming in with the search aspect, but they are also going to need somebody who understands the methods of systematic reviews, and in that case, I'm fulfilling both of those roles. it's just really nice to have that variety, and they can be very interdisciplinary, which many schools and universities are now pushing for, and systematic reviews are the natural fit to really see those teams. So there was some, this question was great. How do you know when you have all the right search terms? Of course, we can never be completely sure. There's no like great measure to say, oh, that was, you know, the best search ever. It's all about what's appropriate. And then the goal is with, by doing those other search techniques after you've done all your database searching, especially searching the references to see is there anything in there that was missed. That's all basically we can do. We can never know for sure. And there was that question about, let's see, I pasted it over here, how to modify the search. So I wasn't sure how in detail you want me to go in. Was it Kristen that you asked that question? Are you talking about the slide where I was showing the line numbers and how I was combining things together, or like last week's slide? Okay, so I'm sorry I didn't paste that in here, but basically the idea is to take each criteria that you have, and so for a lot of it, those are the different concepts. So for example, if I was doing a search on mobile apps for diabetes management, I'm going to have at least, I'm going to have some set of concepts on diabetes, and then some terms for mobile apps. And then if I were testing an article, I'm going to and that article with one concept and then and it with another. And the idea behind that is to figure out which concept is not allowing an article to come through. Sometimes it's because of the limits that you've put on. And so it's just this series of logic statements that I do. Some people will just look at it overall and try and compare that article with the concepts they already have. I really like line searching and doing those logic steps that I was showing last time. So it weeds out the non-working terms. Right, the non-working terms for that specific article, like why didn't it make it down the list? Because sometimes you have one concept that's really easy to get all of the articles on that one topic, such as the diabetes article. But then for mobile apps, there are so many different ways of referring to mobile apps that that's probably the one that is going to cause a problem. And so I hope that that helps. I know everybody does it a little bit differently, and okay. Okay, good. I had this other question. I had some questions about which resources should be searched, and then there was this one was looking at systematic reviews in public health. And no matter what your what the specific field in, it's always going to come down to that question and what makes sense for it. And so, and then in public health, it's wide open because you could have more of a policy question, more of a clinical question, more of a health promotion or health education kind of question. We do have the list from Cochrane, what they would like for you to be searched for their kinds of topics, and that tends to be Medline, Embase, and Cochrane Central. And then in other, as you expand out and do more than just clinical topics, it can also depend on who the population is focused on. So a lot of times in health promotion questions, I'm also going to search ERIC, maybe sport discus if it's an exercise related question, sports related question, anything to do with rehabilitation. So so it really just comes down to it depends. I don't have like a preset list just for public health. Then this was where I was looking at the list of articles that was already found. So after I do all the database searches, I ask them to come back and see me after they've sorted everything, and then that's when I'm going to do those other searches, which you talked about last week, and then do that testing. So I think we've already talked through that a lot. I didn't realize I had two things on the search filters. So we talked about okay, sorry. We got this other question now about MBase and sport discus. So it depends on the topic and whether or not you should search those. So sport discus is kind of a specialized database in that you see a lot of things in there about, of course, sports related and also the rehabilitation aspect. And this happens on lots of reviews in that you know that there's this great database, you may not have access to search it. You may then think about if there are some specific journals that are indexed there that you don't have access to in a different way, maybe going through those titles, something like that. I've also contacted librarians at other places and I've designed searches and asked them to run them, so I've done it all in different ways. You have Scopus. So I think it's not a bad combination, Scopus and CINAHL, because Scopus does have Medline and MBase in it. The hard part between Scopus versus MBase is it's searching the M-tree, the source terms from MBase just as keywords, and you don't have the mapping or exploding of terms, but at least you are getting to those articles in some way. So yeah, it's a tough, access is a tough thing. We've already talked about the ISSG search filters. I didn't realize I put in the picture in the wrong place there. And then there are filters for PubMed and Ovid Medline for excluding animals. And that's available in the online Cochrane handbook. Let's see. So that was the last slide of questions that I had made slides for. There was one question asked earlier, I think it was Judy, about software packages for forest plots. And so I'm going to paste in this link. This is from the same group that has the distiller software, but this happens to be, this is their free forest plot generator. I like this one because you can make some changes on it online and watch the forest plot move around, so it's great when teaching others about forest plots, but you can also upload data from a spreadsheet, and then you can also download the chart and data from it as well. So hopefully that's helpful. Did I say that Scopus has MBase in it? Yes, they cover everything that's in MBase from 1966 forward. They do, when you're searching as keyword entry terms are searched, they just don't have the mapping to the entry. So. Yeah, so it is a big problem, especially if you were doing a pharmaceutical related review that Embase, that's one of its big strengths, is all of the pharmaceutical literature. Also, it indexes a lot of international journals as well. So it could be a problem, and it would depend on your topic. You're welcome. There were a few other questions, especially around the different types of reviews, and we're going to come back and revisit this when we look at the other reviews and how to support them. One question that I had was how to explain the different types of review to faculty. And so kind of my elevator speech is narrative reviews are basically the author's opinion. It's you looked at the literature, this is what you picked, and this is how you arranged it. And systematic reviews are a research method that is a study of studies. And so it's very narrow in its question, and there are standard ways of presenting and appraising those studies. So that's kind of a short and sweet way of saying it. And sometimes it takes a little while of playing with it, and I think showing them examples of the same topic approached in different ways by different review types is sometimes one of the most helpful ways of thinking about it. And in the later session, we're going to go over integrative and realist, and there's all these other types of reviews out there. And the way that it's going right now, there's a lot of talk about defining all of these even more and getting them more kind of solidified, because right now it's very much a scale. So say my elevator speech again. Okay, I could do that. So basically, narrative reviews are opinion. It's that's the author or the author's take on a certain topic. For the most part, they added in whatever references they wanted, organized it however they wanted, and so it, of course, you know, you can respect their opinion, especially when they're experts on a topic, but you can't really judge its validity in that kind of a thing. It's not the same idea as a research method. And systematic reviews are a research method. It's a, and I like to describe it as a study of studies. So hopefully that kind of shorter, sweeter way of describing them will be helpful. Did I miss any questions or any comments in here? We have a few more minutes just going over any of these other ones. Oh, here's one. Some faculty want to call their articles systematic reviews, so they add a Prisma flowchart. And does that enhance a narrative review's validity? It would depend if they actually described how they searched for those. I think just having the numbers and we sorted it down to this isn't going to be really helpful if they didn't tell me the methods done to do that. So I don't know that that would increase its validity the same way. Let's see, here's a don't let this happen to you. Yes. So systematic reviews do need to be done by more than one person, so you rarely see those done by one person. Kimberly was writing about a reviewer from a journal said he's looking at this systematic review on a certain drug, and they did not search Embase, and then he went and looked at it, and he was able to find many more trials. So yeah, it is a big problem when you're not able to search all of the literature. It is going to cause issues and potentially missing really important things. So so I would totally agree with that. Any other questions? For Wendy's question in looking at excluding the Medline articles from the Embase, I would like to look into more research on this. I have done it on a few reviews because the team I was working with, they were like, oh no, we don't want to look through that many. But I have really wondered, was that a good idea? And I have seen, I'll see if I can't look at it really quickly. Cochrane's handbook does have something about this. So I'll see if I can't find that really quickly. And I do plan on having at least one more of these question-answer sessions as well. So that may be something that I can look into and answer at a later time. I would agree that you might miss things because of how Embase indexes. They seem to have a lot more in-depth indexing, and so you might kick out some things that Medline maybe didn't index as well as Embase did, but was in a Medline journal, and so by excluding it, you would lose those. Oh, I am going to talk more about duplicates and working with duplicates when we get to the software session. There have been a lot of great research and on how to do that better. I'm definitely not an expert on that. I just kind of get through it. So we can. I'm looking forward to going through that and figuring it out. So, are there any other questions? I'm going to write down the one about Embase and excluding Medline journals as one to look into, kind of report on that. Well, thank you all for coming today. If you have any other questions, you can always post them.
So I wanted to do a last-minute reminder. If anyone wanted to ask a question verbally or be unmuted, you could raise your hand and do that, or just put your questions in the chat. And of course, we will be collecting questions going forward, and we'll talk about whether or not we want to do another Q&A session a little later on after we've had a few more of the regular sessions.
Oh, you're welcome. I always learn something new, so I'm still learning more about Embase, and I especially love to hear from those of you that have a lot more experience than me with searching Embase. I always learn some new resources from these talks. So thank you very much, and I look forward to talking with everyone again for the next session.
And just a reminder for everyone about the final session. The final session will be happening April 6th is the next session. It will be session 3, and we'll be talking specifically about what happens after the search. A reminder, please remember to check for login information online. The login information will be different for every session. We will make sure to have that uploaded online as well as in our email announcements. And don't forget to participate in the social media discussion using #PiecesQA. So thank you everyone for coming today, and we hope to see you at the next session.